Hi everyone, and thanks so much for stopping by. This video is a part of the Mini Scenes GB collaboration for June. The theme this June is fantasy. So I started thinking about, gosh, what does fantasy mean to me? Is it 50 Shades of Grey? Is it Star Wars and dragons and fairies? And I think for me, it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland, kind of whimsical. So I opted to go for a Alice in Wonderland clock. So this mold is from Pouring Your Heart Out. It's a melting clock mold. And so it's going to take a few layers, a few different pours to get exactly what I think I'm going for. So like the outside of the melting part will be one color, the face of the clock will be a different one. And then I'm going to use some water slide paper that has this super cute decal. And I will put that in the center of the clock, and then the hands of the clock will kind of be a part of that water slide decal when all is said and done, or at least that's kind of the plan. So what I'm going to do is mix up about 8 ounces of resin. That's probably going to be too much, but I use the J Diction High Gloss resin. It's one of my favorites, so I'll mix up too much resin. That I'll obviously have extras, but that's okay. And I will mix up, and I'll be right back. I did mix up about 8 ounces of resin. That's going to be about 3 ounces too much, but that's okay. You never know. If you make a mistake, it's always nice to have a little bit extra. As we'll see later, when you spill things, it's always nice to have extra. So I'm going to put a little bit of resin into this smaller cup, so that way I can mix up some glitter and a little bit of mica powder so that we can do the numbers on the clock. And I did cover my mold with paper towels just to kind of keep any of that extra glitter or mica powder from falling into the mold. I found some of the cutest glitters that I'll show you in just a second. But first I'm going to add a little bit of this fluorescent pink mica powder just to kind of color the resin a little bit. I am going to fill it with glitter, but I did want to make sure it was fairly opaque. So I'm just going to put in a little bit of mica powder, and then I'm going to come in behind it with this glitter. I found this great site or this great seller on Etsy that had this sample pack. I think there were about 60 different glitters in the sample pack, and I have just fallen in love with some of them. They are just gorgeous, and this one especially I think is so pretty. I think it's going to look really great with the color of the clock. So the color of the clock, the melting part of the clock is going to be a deep purple. I'm going to use a pigment paste from Lorez. I think it's called, oddly enough, deep purple. And so I'll mix that up for the outside of the melting clock part. So hopefully these two colors will go really well together. So I'm just going to stir in my mica powder and my glitter and get that really well incorporated. The glitter is going to sink a little bit, but that is completely fine. It's a very fine glitter, but it'll still sink a little bit, which is okay, because once we demold, it's going to be, on the face of those numbers, and so it's completely fine that it sinks. This color is so pretty. I really love it. I think that it's going to look great with the purple of the clock. All right, let's get started. There are so many different ways that you can get resin into these small little numbers. You can use a syringe. You can, if you have a really steady hand, you can pour from your cup. You can, especially if you have a paper cup, you can just pinch your cup, or you can have really sticky gloves and just get your stick stuck to your gloves and then just get your resin everywhere, which apparently is my preferred method for getting resin into these numbers. But the great thing is that baby wipes will clean up pretty much anything. So I feel like I go through so many baby wipes, because no one tells you when you start resin how sticky it is and how many drips there are going to be. So I'm so grateful for isopropyl alcohol and baby wipes. So I'm just going to take my stick and I'm going to actually just drop the resin into each of the numbers. If I had a larger syringe, I would probably use that, but the ones I have are pretty small, and because there's glitter in the resin, it does tend to clog the nozzle. So I'm just going to use my stick and I'll just go around and drop these in one drip at a time and try not to make too much of a mess in the process. I will speed this part up because nobody wants to watch me drop resin into 12 different numbers, and I'll be back to you in just a minute. And just like that, all the numbers are magically completed. I had a little quick cleanup, and now I'm going to get ready to mix up the purple that will go along the edges of the melting piece. I love the Lorez pigments. They are so highly pigmented and just stunning. I know that this will look a little black in the pot, but it's actually a really deep, beautiful purple. Very rich, very gorgeous. So I'm going to start with just a little bit. I never know exactly how much to put in because a little bit does go a long way. But there is also, I guess there are 7 ounces of resin in this cup. So we may end up needing a little bit more. But I'm going to start with just a little bit and then see how that goes. I'm not sure how many times I have to tell myself that you can always add more, but you can't take some out. But it seems like I have to tell myself that a lot. Sometimes I just dive right in. And let me apologize for having the world's biggest mixing stick. I had no idea it was so huge. It looks like it's still a little bit on the light side, so I think I am going to go back and add just a little bit more pigment paste. I'm just going to go in and grab a big dollop off of the lid and then add that to my cup and then give that a good stir and make sure that's really well incorporated. And then hopefully that'll give us the color that we're looking for. If not, once again, right, we can always just add a little bit more. But I'm going to scrape it off my stick. Pigment paste is super sticky and loves to stick to the sides of your cup, and it loves to just adhere itself to your stick. So you have to kind of give it a little bit of a vigorous stir to make sure it gets really well incorporated. So once this is all mixed up and we have the color we want, it's going to go around the edges and it'll kind of fill in those melting pieces. Yeah, that is much, much better. That is much darker. I think will look great with the pink of the numbers. And once again, I apologize that you're having such an intimate experience with my stick today. My goodness, that stick is a little bit more than probably we need. So I love this crushed crystal. It is stunning. It is absolutely stunning. It is this really fine, I don't know if it's crushed crystal, so I guess it's really not glitter, but it has this gorgeous shimmer to it. And I'm not sure how much you can see in the camera, but it's so pretty. And just the tiniest amount is really all you need. It will take over your piece if you're not careful. So just use it very sparingly. And it gives just a little hint of shimmer. So with this purple, it'll just give a little tiny bit of sparkle. I know that's really hard to see in the camera, but it is really pretty. Just a little bit of sparkle dust in there just to kind of, I don't know, bring a little bit of joy to your world, because isn't everything better with a little bit of sparkle? All right, so now that is all mixed up, I am actually just going to pour this into a smaller cup to make it easier to get everything around the outside edges. Those little melting pieces, some of them are quite small, so I think I'm going to just pour or spray in a little bit of isopropyl alcohol before I get started, and then that way, hopefully that'll prevent any bubbles from forming in those little tiny places. So I'm just going to start by pouring into the melting pieces. So I'll just go all the way around the piece, trying to get in all these little places, all these little crevices, to make sure that resin flows down there. Of course, resin is self-leveling, so it'll kind of find its own path. But as my resin is starting to get a little bit warm, it's a little bit thicker, so I do want to help it along its way. You want to be really careful not to overfill your mold, especially if you're only trying to do that outer edge at this point, because if you do overfill it, it will go into the face of the clock. So my plan is that I will do the dark purple around the edges, and then the face of the clock. I've been kind of debating whether I want to go white or if I wanted to go black. I think black might be a little too overwhelming. color choices are one of the things that I really struggle with. I'm not confident in the colors that I choose to make sure that they all go well together. And I'm also apparently not very confident in getting the resin into the exact right places, as I overspilled a little bit. But that's okay. Baby wipes are our best friend. So I can just wipe all of that up and then go back to filling. So I do struggle, I feel like, with color combinations. What I think will look good together, and then when it's actually done, my vision does not always match the end product. I've looked at, color wheels and complementary colors and things like that, but it doesn't always seem to work out the way I want it to. Another thing that doesn't seem to work out exactly like I want it to is pouring resin over the top of the mold. I cannot believe I just did that. I know better. I went to pour it into my cup and, you know what, made a little bit of a mess. So breaking out the trusty baby wipes and try to clean this up. It wouldn't be so bad if it hadn't gotten into one of the numbers. So now I'm going to have to go in and try to fish all of that out and see if we can get it back to the pink. I guess one of the good things about resin, though, especially when it's wet, is that you can fix it, right? There's not a whole lot that you can't fix. So I think I will grab a baby wipe and try to get out as much of it as I possibly can. I think this is what happens when you spend far too much time talking and not enough time concentrating on what you're supposed to be doing. A couple of ways you can get this out is you can use your baby wipe. If it was not quite as thick as it is, you can use a paper towel and kind of stick it on the number to absorb the purple. Or you could also just grab a trusty stick and fish it out with a stick or a dotting tool or anything like that. The purple is going to be mostly on the top, so we can just kind of fish it out. And fortunately, there is a little bit of extra pink in the cup. Once again, I always make extra. It's never by design, but usually it does end up working out in my favor because at least I can go back in now and fill in the pink that I tried to make a unique color combination. And look at that, a little magical cleanup, and it's all good now. But of course, my cup is now covered in resin all the way around, and so it is a super, super sticky mess. But that's okay because that's part of the love of resin, or is it the love-hate relationship I have with resin? I'm not always 100% sure. So I'm just going to go around and fill in as much as I can to get it filled up right to the line of the clock face. And then I am going to let this cure for, I don't know, probably about 12 hours. The J-Diction does take, 8, 10, 12 hours, depending on where you are. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and even though it is June, it is still quite chilly here. So I think today it's in the high 50s and rain. So it will take a little bit longer. I'm sure I'll pop on the heat mat just to give it a little bit of warmth coming up. Okay, so next steps are once this cures, so like I said, probably about 12 hours, I will come in and pour a clear coat across the clock face because in order to put down your water slide decal, you need a layer of thin resin. So I will put that down, and then once that thin resin cures, then we can come in and put the water slide paper down. So I'll see you in just a second. Hey everyone, it's been about 12 hours. Well, 2 seconds for you, 12 hours for me. And we are all cured up. and time to put on a clear coat. We're going to put on a water slide decal, and we do need to have a clear coat down to make sure that it goes on the right way and that we can manipulate it and make sure it's in the right place before then we put a final backing on that. So this is the water slide decal that we're going to use. It's so cute, and I think it really matches this clock, just the kind of funkiness of the clock and the funkiness of this decal. So really excited to give it a go. So I mixed up about 7 ounces of resin, and that will not completely fill up the entire back, but that's okay because we don't need it to. Really, we just need it to fill up the clock face, and then anything outside of that is just fine. I added a tiny bit of crushed crystal in there. I love the sparkle from it. It just adds a little bit of something to it. So I did add that in. One of the things I wanted to point out before we get started is yesterday I said, oh, don't overfill your mold because it can run onto the clock face. Well, guess who overfilled their mold a little bit? So there is some spillage from the top. The bottom seems to be okay, but the top definitely, it kind of spilled a little bit. Some of the drips at the top are very fine. And as you can see, that's kind of a blob. So it did overspill. Will it be okay? Probably, but is it exactly what I was going for? Not quite. But I think when we demold, I think it'll be okay. I think it's just one of those things, right? Like sometimes you don't get exactly what you want, but it's close. So I am just going to go ahead and pour the clear resin just into the center to start with. I think this will probably take maybe 5 ounces. I made up 7 just in case. It doesn't matter if it doesn't go all the way to the edges. We really just need to make sure that the clock face itself has resin all the way across it. So I'm just going to kind of spread that out and then give that some time to cure. It needs to be fully cured completely 100% before we put the water slide on. So for those of you who aren't familiar with water slide paper, it's literally paper that you put into water and it kind of slides off. Think of it like a temporary tattoo a little bit. It kind of works along those same lines. You get it wet and then it slides off the paper and then it can be placed into your resin. So your resin does need to be completely cured and fully hardened before you put your water slide on. Resin and water, they do not like each other. So I'll give it plenty of time to make sure that it's fully cured before we put the water slide on. So I'm just going to continue to mess with this because that's what I do, is just mess with things, probably too much. And the next steps will be to, once this is fully hardened, and about 24 hours from now, we'll get the water slide paper and put that on. And then after the water slide is fully dried, then we'll put a back coating on. I think I'm going to go for a white. But I guess we'll find out when we get there. You never know when you might change your mind at the very last second. So I'm going to let this cure and then I will see you for the next step. All right. Hey everyone. And thanks for coming back today. And today we're going to put on our water slide paper. So this little decal is going to actually go face down right here over this little nib. So water slide paper is so easy to use. It comes in, there's different types. There's for laser jet printers, and then there's also for inkjet printers. So I have an inkjet, and I know some people who use inkjet printers, they don't seal their water slide before they use it. However, I do, because I'm always so afraid that I've gone to all this work and then to not seal it and then have it run, it scares me. So I do seal mine. I use the Rust-Oleum 2x Ultra Cover, and I put on 3 coats. So I do the first coat, I wait about half an hour. I do the second coat, I wait a half hour, and then I do the third coat and I wait about an hour. And then I feel like it's pretty dry at that point and it's okay to go ahead and use. So I seal it. I don't know if you absolutely have to. If you have a laser jet, you don't. But if you have an inkjet, I feel like it's the safest bet. but it's so, so easy to use. So let me show you. The first thing you want to do, I just want to make sure, I'm going to get this out in the middle. The first thing you want to do is get a bowl of water. I tend to use warm water. I don't know that it matters, but I tend to use warm water. And then you're just going to take your image and then you're going to just slide it in. Now, it's going to want to curl up, so just hold it down. It usually takes, I don't know, it depends, you know, between a minute to maybe 3 minutes. Usually you don't have to hold it down the whole time. It'll just kind of hold itself down after a little bit. You just want to get it to where it's not curling up and that it's sitting flat in the water. And then that way the water can get underneath that and loosen it up from the backing. And then we can put it down on our resin piece. So I'm going to give it just a little bit and see how that goes. You'll know it's done because if you just kind of run your finger over it, you can feel it start to pull away. And it is not pulling away, so I'm just going to give it a little bit longer. And I did trim my image down pretty close to the actual image itself, just because I feel like it's easier if I've trimmed it down, and that way there's less excess on the sides that can curl up on itself. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. Let's see here if it's starting to move at all. The whole idea is that it starts to slide, and look, it is a little bit. Okay, so let's move this over out of the way. And then we'll move our resin piece back here. Just want to make sure that that is centered. And then we're going to take, and we're just going to put some water just all over the face here. And I know people are like, no, don't put water on resin, but it's dry resin, so it's actually really okay. And so my water slide's been in here a little bit too long, and it's starting to kind of slide off. So hopefully it won't wrinkle too, well, it's already kind of wrinkled a little bit, but that's okay. So we'll go ahead and put it on. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick it into that little hole there. Kind of just set down the top part. Normally you would slide it off. So we just kind of do this. But because that little nib is in the way, it won't slide at the top. So just pull it back really, really gently. It's not happy with me. Okay. Just really gently. See if you can get it to stick down to your resin. This is really not as difficult as it seems, I promise. Okay, and then just kind of smooth it out. Normally you would slide the paper off and it would just kind of smooth as you did it, but because of that little nib, it makes it a little bit more challenging. So once we get it off of the nib, now we're just gonna slide it, just like that. And we'll just slide it completely off the image. And then voila, our image is here. So I'm gonna put just a little bit more water on it just to give it some flexibility. Typically with water slide, you're not putting it in upside down. What I have found is it doesn't slide quite as well as if you put it the other side up, so the image facing you, which is the way it's really supposed to go. It tends to just adhere better that way. And when you put it down backwards or upside down, it doesn't like to slide as much. Normally with water slide paper, there's a lot more sliding that happens, but that's okay. Just try your best if you're putting it in upside down to make sure that you kind of get it where you want it before you remove the paper completely. So that way, if you need to move it, you can. Okay, so now you just want to take, and you can use a silicone brush if you want to. You can use one of these little squeegees to kind of get the excess water out. You just want to make sure that you're getting all of the water that's underneath that decal out, because eventually, once this is fully dried, we're going to coat it with resin to seal it in. So I'm just gonna take my little squeegee. I already used my finger to kind of get it out. And so now I'm just gonna take my squeegee and do the same thing all the way around. Slowly and gently. You don't want to tear your sticker or your decal. It is very sensitive, I guess. So just be gentle with it. When it's wet like this, it's a little bit sensitive. So you can just take a paper towel and dot it over the image. Do not rub it, because if you rub it, you can actually tear your image, and you don't want to do that. You've worked so hard to get to this point. So I am just going to continue to get all of the excess water out. And I'm going to continue to do this. You know, I'm going to squeegee the water out, and then I'll dot it with a paper towel, and then I'll give it a few minutes, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do that for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so. By then it'll really start to dry, and then it should get a really good seal on there. You just don't want to have any water trapped underneath your image if you can help it. Because as we all know, resin and water, they are not besties. Now, the one thing I will say is when you put the decals on upside down, it is hard to make sure that they're straight. So there's a very good possibility that this little guy might be a little crooked, but that's okay, right? Because the image is a little wonky, the clock is a little wonky. So I think if it's crooked, I think we're completely okay. And as you can see, well, you may not be able to see, but as I'm going over it, you know, I blotted it, it was dry. And then as I squeegee it out, there's still water coming out. So just go slowly and gently in all the different directions, blotting it in between each time. And then once you're satisfied that all the water is out, you're gonna wanna let it set and let it get a good dry. So I always let it dry for about 24 hours just to make sure it is really adhered to my resin before I put that top coat on. So I'm going to just squeegee this out, and I will see you tomorrow to put the top coat on. Hey everyone. Okay, so am I the only one, or does everybody struggle with that urge to like run downstairs the second you wake up and demold your resin? Because that was my experience this morning. I jumped out of bed and I was running towards the stairs. Okay, not running, because I took like 2 steps, and then my knees were like, yeah, by the way, you're fragile and delicate, so how about no? So instead, I very gingerly walked down the stairs, and now we're here, and I'm so excited to demold. I cannot wait to see what this looks like. I'm a little nervous about putting the clock fixture on since I've never done that before, but I'm sure together we can figure that out. But before we dive in, just a reminder that this video is part of the June Fantasy collaboration with Mini Scenes GB and Crafty YouTubers United. So I will put the link to the playlist in the description box. Please go check it out. There are so many amazing, incredibly talented resin artists who are taking part in this collaboration. So please go check them out. I'll put the link in the description box. All right, so shall we do this? I'm so excited. Okay, so I think the best thing to do is probably start with these little thin pieces down here. So I'm just gonna turn this around to make it easier. And then just try and like get this out as best I can, and then I'll flip it over to pull out the other piece. I always worry about like these little thin pieces. I don't want to snap them off. Like, well, you've worked really hard on this. Well, at least you put a lot of time into it and a lot of worry. And and so I always worry about just like snapping off like little tiny pieces. Anytime you do like a little animal, oh my gosh, have you guys done the unicorn with the cute little horn? I am always so terrified I'm gonna get a bubble in that and snap it right off. Okay, so that part is done. So I am just going to go ahead and pull this off. I'm always so nervous about it. You just never know, right?
But then again, it's kind of like Christmas. You never know what you're gonna get. Okay. I kind of think I love it. All right, let's see. Okay, so some issues, a few, right? Which is okay. So you can see like where the purple here, it melted onto the clock face when I over poured. We talked about that. So I definitely did that. The other piece that I'm not sure about is this purple. So if you pick it up and you look at it in the light, it definitely, you can see that it's purple, but when it's down flat and it's kind of just dark behind it, it's really hard. It's really hard to tell that it's purple, but overall, I'm kind of loving it. The image is a little wonky, which we kind of knew it was going to be. I said that there was a definite possibility that it might be askew, but that's okay because the clock itself is a little bit askew, right? So if I were to do it again, I would put it on this way so that I could make sure that I could actually see the image and make sure it's correct. And you know, also the other thing is too, is if you ever really wanted to do water slide after the fact, you could put this on now when it's dried and then just top coat it. You could do that too. You just have to make sure that you seal it in. But overall, I'm pretty happy with that. And I know you probably can't see the sparkle. There's some sparkle dust. And there's something that was on the mold here. But you probably can't see the sparkle dust in there, but it's really pretty in person. Like you can see like all the little sparkles and everything. Okay, so, and there's a little bit of a smear. Oh, it's not a smear, it's the water slide paper. Oh, that's too bad. You can actually see it just a little bit like around these edges here. Darn it. Yeah, you can see the water slide paper just a tiny bit. Like I can't really see it over here, but there's like a little tiny edge where you can see that. But overall, I'm still pretty darn happy with that. Okay, so clock mechanism looks like this. This part goes through the clock itself. It has this little black ring. I don't know. Is it a washer? I'm not sure. And it has the little gold washer that goes there. So you just push that through the back like that. And then once you get that through, then you're going to take, and every mechanism is a little bit different, but you're just going to take your washer and then you're going to screw this on, screw it on here, which is going to hold that in place. You're going to want to, one, make sure it's on correctly, but two, you want to make sure that that you tighten it down just so that it doesn't move and it's really secure. So I didn't grab the tool to do that, so I will just hand tighten it for now, but then later I will grab the actual tool to do that. Okay, so then you put on your hour hand first, which just goes on here. And then there is this little tiny piece here that you just screw on to hold that hour hand in place. And it would help if I had little tiny fairy hands right now. Because I don't. And my big fingers get in the way here. There we go. See, persistence pays off, right? Okay, so we have that at 12 o'clock, so we're just going to tighten that down as best we can. Okay, so now that is at 12 o'clock, and then we're just going to come behind it. Sometimes the hands come a little bent, so you just want to make sure that they're straight. And then we're just going to pop that into here at the 12 o'clock position as well. And then that's it. And then you can set your time from the back. There's the little dial. There's the little dial once that's all. And you can just adjust your time there. So as soon as I get that on nice and tight, those hands will work just perfectly. And then that's it. So thank you guys so much for taking some time out and watching this video. I know it was a little bit long I appreciate your patience with all of my missteps along the way. And I hope that you will take some time to go and watch some of the other videos that are part of this playlist, which is once again linked in the description below. And thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your support, and I hope to see you again.